Hi, I'm Yelena, and welcome to Confetti Conversations, a new type of interview series that mixes conversation with confetti, just to celebrate the beautiful mess of being human. I'm your host and the creator of the Confetti Project, where for the past 10 years, I've been on a mission to bring play back into adulthood through photo shoots, workshops, and now this series. Today's guest is Nasimeh B, a multidisciplinary artist, facilitator, and creator whose work blends creativity, healing, and play as a way to spark deep transformation. In today's episode, we explore identity, anxiety, and belonging, how to hold space for play and grief, and why it's important to listen to your inner voice as a way of coming back to yourself. This is for you if you've been craving tools around authenticity, creativity, and emotional aliveness. Welcome to your new favorite playdate.
Land in the space. And obviously y'all are invited to as well. Yeah, it helps link up our nervous systems when we do this. So I'll invite us to take a big breath in together. Big breath out. Amazing. Cool. Thank you. That was really helpful for me. So younger me, I've had so many different iterations. But one thing that's always been a constant is an appreciation of the mystery of living and a curiosity and creativity. And I think that's probably common for a lot
to your new favorite playdate.
Artists or creative sorts, is this real connection to the vibrancy of life in some capacity. When I was a small child, I was really into stories and fantasy. I read every book I could get my hands on. I was always drawing and creating. And then in high school, I was just such a theater kid. And then into my adolescence and 20s, I'd say I kept all that creativity, but also wound up in spaces where I became more in the educator and facilitator role. But the little being was really fond of magic. And then that's kind of a through line that has continued, is an appreciation of the mystery.
I went into the public school system when I was in 5th grade. That's where I started going more inward, becoming more self-conscious. And, there were a bunch of other things from the outside, from a macro and micro perspective, that disconnected me from that pure, curious version of myself. And so I'm curious, as you were growing up, if there were some of those factors for you that disconnected you from yourself? Yeah, what was that experience like for you? You're like, how long do you have?
Yeah, literally. So I was diagnosed with anxiety when I was 5. I was really young when I was told that there was something different about me. And I think that really pursued me. My parents were doing their best. Child of an immigrant, right? They were doing their best, first gen. It was the 90s. It was the time where they were like, these pills are amazing. They do incredible stuff. And so I was medicated pretty young. To tell a child that young, you have X, is just a real scarlet letter, or that's how I experienced it. So I spent a lot of my life thinking, well, I'm just different. I'm just built different than the other kids. Then, on top of that, I'm mixed. I'm half Iranian. I'm Iranian-American. And that, I grew up in the South. I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, to an immigrant family. And that was hard. I was different. I was ostracized. I was told that I didn't belong. I didn't feel belonging. And then by the time I was in middle school, I was trying so hard to fit in. I remember coming to 6th grade, and I was wearing, on the first day of 6th grade, I was so excited I wore my Rugrats shirt, because I loved the Rugrats, and I thought they were great. And then I really quickly learned that was not what I was supposed to do, and that we were not playing anymore. And it was we were supposed to not be playful anymore, and I was so baffled. Because I was like, guys, last year we were playing, and now it's we have to be cool. And I was like, what the hell? But I wanted to fit in, because every child does. So I tried so hard, right? By the time I was in high school, I was like, well, I don't fit in. It's not working, right? I was a great student, but that didn't get me anywhere, so what's the point of it? And then it was the aughts, and it was cool to be uncool suddenly. And so like it kind of came back around by the time I was like a junior or senior, but by that point I was so angry and so just like bitter. What disconnected me is the same thing that disconnects so many of us. You're different, you don't belong, there's something wrong with you, you're too much, you're too big, you're too loud, you're not enough, like all of those stories. And then on top of that, like I think we all have some version of that, and then we each get our own flavor. And my flavor was like, your family is different, they're like Muslims, like as much as that was, it was hard. And I really struggled, and my mental health was a real like challenge for me for a long time. And I feel so grateful for the medicines that have brought me back to myself. But I don't know if I could be who I am and give what I give without the story that created it. So even with all that, I can have some tenderness for it because it builds us, it makes us.
The word that kept coming up for me when I was looking into like researching you, like what's another way to say it?
I love that though, it's so fun. It's like, the Wikipedia of me, yeah.
Is authenticity. What is authenticity to you? And how does one teach people to teach themselves to embody that?
Authenticity, I would say, is living true to whatever is your central self. I always put my hand here when I talk about like authenticity or living from our center. Because there's a way in which when I'm tuned into myself, it comes from like the middle of me, right? The belly, the intuition. And I think authenticity is just like living openly from there and not worrying about outcome. And I was reflecting on how in the past little while, I've felt really beautifully divorced from outcome in regards to how I interact with people. By which I mean saying something honest to someone and not worrying about what they say in response. And I think there's some authenticity there. Like when we're living from our truth, we can release a little bit what happens afterwards. I think one of the best ways for any of us to get in touch with our authenticity is to come to know our deep center, our truth, our place, our sense of connection to self. Because once you have that, you can live from the inside out, not the outside in. And that's what being authentic is, right? And that's what being connected is. How do we find authenticity? Being with ourselves, doing our work, undoing those narratives, and being surrounded by people who celebrate us. Because we can't do it if we're surrounded by people who aren't caring for us in some way. We need each other. So
on that note, are you ready to play with confetti?
Yes, let's
Shall we do it?
Yeah.
So how do you feel right now?
So good. Yeah, so released and connected and like easeful.
So tell me, what is the role of play in your life now?
I love that.
How have you reclaimed play as an adult?
The first one that comes to mind is dance. I used to be an improviser. I studied improv for years, and that was a really good means of play. I'm like a climber and a runner, and like those can be playful. And then I think that, like above all, sort of like social play, like with the events I create, they're very, very playful events. I also really value having friends who can play with me. So through just conversational, playful interactions, right? Or bits that we do together.
What would you say to people that are very play deprived or have been really disconnected from play. Like, how do you embody play on a daily basis in micro moments, and why is it so important to do that?
I think it gets us into a different part of our brain where we're, when we're not outcome focused and we're present moment focused. Ways to get into it can be, if you have an animal, that can be a really great way to get into it. If you have like a pet, putting on a song and dancing to a song you love is a great way to do it. Often with my workshops, I'll lead people through what I call somatic art, which is like art making by feeling, not by looking. That's a great way to do it. And also like board games and stuff like that can be a great way. But if it's a person who it's like, I don't know how to fit this into my day, you can really take like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, put on a song you love and dance, or 5 minutes, 10 minutes of like finger painting or something that's really accessible creativity that you can do easily.
One of the things that I love about your creativity, the art that you share, is taking really complex emotions and putting words to it. So what is your relationship to joy and to grief? How do you hold space for the duality of both of those things coexisting?
We have to, because they do. And our capacity for grief is directly linked to our capacity for joy. I think one of the greatest gifts I've ever given myself is the ability to be with the experience, whether it is joy or grief or anywhere in between, the capability to inhabit an experience and not run from it. Grief is one of our most challenging experiences as humans, but it's also our most human. We're all going to experience it unless we're the one who goes first. That's it. So the more that we can have an awareness and an appreciation of that reality, and the less we resist it, the more we can inhabit our lives fully in all its vibrancy, the lows, as the Buddhists say, the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows.
I've been really frustrated over the years because for me, grief has been such a gift because you can't change it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the ultimate truth of being human. And it actually taught me how to feel, and it made me understand like, oh, my mortality, and how can I, have appreciation every single day. Just waking up is the gift, right? And because in Western culture, this is really different from the culture I was brought up in, where Slavic culture is, we talk about death. And I actually think that allowed for me to grieve, like it made it easier to grieve because it wasn't something that just like knocked me off my feet. There's so much beauty in it. And I actually think finding the joy in the grief and finding the celebration in the grief, how do you honor yourself amidst the grief? So I really love that you're like speaking to those themes because I think it's really important to destigmatize grief.
2 years ago, I went through a breakup that was just like, just really, really a frustrating, gut-wrenching breakup. And I was hurting so badly. And I was sitting outside this restaurant and looking up at this tree. And I remember thinking that the tree looked more vibrant than I'd ever seen anything look. And I mean, I was in the worst torment of my young life, like I was just like so miserable in that moment. But this tree, I was just with it and I was like, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I thought to myself how grief can help us see vividness if we let it and if we really inhabit it. I think a lot of people do turn away from it because it is uncomfortable and it can feel scary because it's so big. I feel like if I go into that lake, will I come back? But again, it's the black in the painting, it's the contrast in the painting, and the more that we can work with that, the more vibrant of an existence we can have. And like you said, the waking up and being grateful, grief can give us that.
What would you say to someone that's never held space for their grief?
I actually would immediately say you'll be so glad you did. I mean, the entry I think is just letting ourselves, because we like wall up against, right? And grief isn't just like personal. It's like I grieve for the world. I grieve for the realities of this world and the pains of it. But I do think that for any of us, if we actually get still and actually drop our defenses, we can find what's in us and needs our attention. It's just our own fear that gets in the way of it.
Can you speak a little bit to how creativity is healing?
So creativity is one of our pathways to flow states and to transcendence. Flow states are a state where time we don't feel tuned into time. We feel kind of outside of ourselves. We're just like in a motion, right? When we feel flow states frequently, we feel joy. Like flow is directly related to well-being. So creativity is one of the known pathways to that. And those are also related to a sense of transcendence. Transcendence being I'm outside of myself, I'm in tune with something larger, I feel connected, right? So creativity gives us that. You know, there's a lot of science to back this up. And at the end of the day, we all know what it feels like when we've done something creative and we just feel more open, expressed, and vibrant afterwards, right? I think people get stopped up because they think, well, I'm not an artist or I'm not creative, but we all hold some form of creativity in us. And it's just like tuning into that and finding the avenue for it. And it truly is such a pathway to wellness. I hope people, if like someone takes one thing away from this interview, the prayer is that they remember that they have creativity inherent inside of them.
The very last thing I like to do, that final confetti throw. 3, 2, 1, go. I just want to say thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. Please subscribe, like, share, comment. It really, really goes a long way, especially at the beginning of starting a YouTube channel. And check out the next episode every other Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.